The question is whether open access is going to be the panacea for the power sector or distribution sector. Before that, I thought I'll just briefly run through a presentation of mine where I think the crux of the problem seems to be a kind of a balanced development. We have a skewed development happening here. So if you had, if you had seen in the last 20 odd years, the reform process has created a good generation capacity in the country. We are the 5th largest in the world with 2,25,000 megawatt in place. But we are just catering 1,32,000 megawatt through the network. So obviously there is an imbalance. So we don't have enough wires and network in place in the distribution side to take that power to that last consumer. So you have, more than 2 crore pump sets, 45% of them still on diesel generators. You have metros, you have the railways, only the main trunk lines seems to be on the electricity. A whole lot of consumers still waiting for connections. So somewhere, the investment on the distribution side is not happening, and that is creating a kind of an artificial surplus. So the generators are looking for avenues to take that power either through an open access method or some other method. So unless this aberration is removed, unless you have wires and cables there to take that power to that end consumers, it's not going to be a reality. So how to get, and all of us know that, the rate at which the network has grown in China, it directly reflects on their economic indicators. They are 4 times our GDP, they are 4 times our per capita GDP, because they grew 5 times in the last 20 years as compared to 2.5 times which we did. So if you look at the 12th plan, so what is in the menu? In the 12th plan document says we are going to invest close to about 10,40,000 crores. 3,50,000 crores on the generator side is almost in place. We know that these projects are going to materialize. Even the 3 lakh for the transmission will materialize, but we are not very certain about how we're going to find this money for the distribution side for a 3,88,000 crores. That's a big, challenge. And if you look a little more on the details of the 12th plan, you have a debt restructuring plan. Well, funds have been clearly demarcated there, but you exclude the private discom there. Then you have a APDRP, again, funds have been clearly demarcated, about $10 billion, and you don't have the private sector participating there. Then the plan enshrines that, look, we're going to promote private investment and participation in distribution, but there's no clear outlay for this. Then you have a program for the rural feeders to be segregated, funds defined. You say this sector is going to create 4 lakh jobs. Well, we don't have an outlay to say how we are going to do it. The smart grid has an outlay. The energy efficiency drive has an outlay. So overall, the crucial areas, you seem to be creating 2 different worlds, a public utility and a private utility. But we need the enablement of both this sector, like we did it in the generation side, to accelerate growth in the distribution sector and to tap that additionality of resources. The same principle we adopted in the generation side. And if you just compare the metrics, you have a cost-reflective tariff on the generation side. You have also on the transmission side, but you don't get a cost-reflective tariff for the distribution side. You have some enablers like the tax holidays in the generation and transmission, but you don't get any kind of such tax holidays on the distribution side. On the distribution side, you fund on the strength of your balance sheet, but you get project financing done on the strength of PPAs or power transmission agreements, both for generation and transmission. So where only the revenue generating contracts are held as collaterals. Then you look at the transparency. You have the highest in the distribution side, and it go through a public debate and everything, but in the generation and transmission, it's limited. If you look how the cost is stacked up on the distribution business. 80% of your cost is towards power purchase cost, 10% goes towards O&M, and another 10% goes towards the financing cost. And out of this 80%, if you take the breakup of that 80, 70 is on the generation side, roughly around 9 to 10% is towards transmission and the load dispatch cost. And the other 10% in O&M, you have the repair and maintenance cost, your employee cost, your administrative cost, they stack up the 10%. And in the finance side, you have interest, depreciation, and the return on equity. And if you see this, the power purchase is an uncontrolled cost. And the O&M cost and the financing cost are controlled cost. So basically, the distribution companies have very limited leeway. That's why they're in such a big financial mess if they don't get a cost-reflective tariff. And if you look at the bankers, they fund equity, they support, they fund debt and equity also in an indirect way, and a whole lot of other basket of funding options, which you see normally in a generation side, you don't see them on the distribution side. You don't have a lease finance, you don't see bill discounting, you don't see project finance structures are not in place. We talk about pension funds, but there's no avenue for it as of now. Then those kind of structures are not there. Then if you look at distribution side, so it's basically the generation costs determined at the CRC level, at the federal level, and that the state regulators are not party to that finalizations of those numbers, and especially in a cost-plus basis mechanism. You have at the tariffs for the distributions are decided at the state level, being a concurrent nature of the business, and that's invariably not reflective to cost. Then you have accumulated losses, you have policy issues. Then, so all these are constraining the distribution side, so you don't get the same kind of treatment as you would get on a generation side, the inadequate tariff, the accumulated losses, and you see on a national level. Last year, the sector supplied over 770 billion units, and 580 billion units were built. And the cost of supply, we realized about 3.6 lakh crores. So that means on an average, the cost of supply to these discoms was at the rate of 6 rupee 30 paisa per unit. And the revenue they got is 4 rupee 20 paisa per unit. So net, the sector had a deficit about 1.2 lakh crores. So that's, and a part of it was supported through subsidy, and bulk of it had to be absorbed by the discoms, and that's why they are in such precarious health conditions. So you need some policy initiatives and certain reform processes, and if you see, there are few initiatives which have been talked. One is those utility which are following the Electricity Act in totality. You have to incentivize them in terms of cheaper power, maybe concessional transmission costs, some tax holidays. It will help the customer, government, distribution sector, and the discom. And there could be another model, like the carriage and content. We could think in terms of the lending institutions when they support any distribution utility, and if they fail to service their debt, there could be covenants saying that, look, a part of the asset could be transferred to the financing company, who could take in a domain partner, and such models have worked in generation side. We have seen NTPC acquire Unchahar in UP when they defaulted, and then it became a performing asset, and they continue to supply. Similar models could work where you could foster some kind of a private development there, or a joint venture development, and the wire and content could be another model where you could solicit private engagement or a public engagement to accelerate network being developed by some independent wire company in that state, so that they debottleneck the network, and then the existing state utility could be the content operator, so that you quickly, debottleneck the system, and then the power could reach to the common man. Lastly, there is a lot of stress being put on the DISCOMs, on the RPO obligations, which again distorts their financial structure. One way could be that you could ask the government consumers and the PSU consumers as a model consumers, and they absorb all these RPO power, so that it will support RPO to be, the green power to be sourced by the DISCOMs, and the common man could be insulated till such time it achieves certain level of maturity. So with this, I think these initiatives are important, because this will help the sector to correct the aberration which is existing there, and the benefits of development on the generation side can actually percolate to the end consumer. Thank you very much.